Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, GP General Ledger, Creating Budgets and Expanding with Management Reporter. We appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us today. There are a couple of housekeeping items we'd like to mention before we begin. All attendees are in listen-only mode. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please either raise your hand so that we can unmute you, or you can submit them through the GoToWebinar question box. We will be answering questions throughout the presentation, and we'll also be following up after the presentation to answer any additional questions. I'd like to introduce today's speaker. We have Amy Walsh, who is a Principal GP Consultant here at Socius. So at this point, Amy, I believe we're ready to transition the presentation over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Leslie. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you as well to the GP General Ledger Creating Budgets and Expanding with Management Reporter presentation. So we're just going to dive right in. I think we've already done the introductions. And let's see. There we go. So a couple of things that we're going to talk about today is one is the Dynamics GP accounts, the budget functionality, creating a budget and using Management Reporter and with budgets, and a few other options for reporting. But first, one thing that I want to talk about with GP is the different types of accounts that we can use with budgeting. Now, the budget functionality in Dynamics GP is compatible, or it actually integrates with Microsoft Excel. And this is going to help you to create and maintain budgets. And you can also create modified budgets and export them to Excel to be imported back into Dynamics GP. Now, a few of the account types that you're going to be familiar with in GP are, one, the balance sheet accounts, which these are the, obviously the asset, liability, and owner's equity accounts. And with these amounts, the amounts in these accounts would typically appear on, obviously a company's balance sheet. The profit and loss accounts, we know what those are. They're the revenue, expenses, cost of sales. And these accounts actually represent the cash and assets going in and out of a company's general ledger. And then thirdly, there is also unit accounts. Now unit accounts, they do not track dollar amounts, which means that these are statistical type accounts. They hold things such as the number of employees, or like a head count, square footage for buildings, and you can actually use these unit accounts within GP on Management Reporter to perform certain calculations. Now, so and going into the balance sheet accounts, I know some people are not as familiar with the unit account, so I want to go ahead and show where you can find unit accounts, and I want to talk just a little bit about how they're used in. Okay, let's get the screen over here. Okay, so here I am. I'm already logged into Dynamics GP. And then from within GP, we all know that we can go to cards, financial, and accounts, or you can use the area pages and click on financial. And once it loads, you'll see the cards and you'll see account. Now, about 4 down, there's what they call the unit account. Now, if you click on a unit account, and these are set up very similar to how you set up posting accounts. And I already have one created in here. Let's look at 600. If you see over here, so this is my employee head count for purchases or receiving. When you are going to create one of these accounts, you set it up just like you do a GP posting account. You give it a name, you can give it an alias, you can specify how many decimal places. You do want to specify which year you are talking about. And in addition, the different periods. So these periods will correlate with your fiscal periods that are set up in Dynamics GP. Now over to the left, you'll see there's a net change and there's also a period balance. And there's always, as well as there's a series for sales and purchasing. So once you have your account set up in here, what you can do in order to put in actual numbers is it also works just like a GL transaction. So I'm still in the financial area. I'm going to go over to transactions, expand the page, and then I'm just going to click on general. And this is the same window that you would use to actually enter in a transaction entry going to the general ledger. Oops. Did not want to make that big. Okay, so it's going to assign itself a journal entry. You can add in a batch if you want to give it a transaction date. And normally with the unit accounts transactions, I pick either the first or the last day of the month. And then you just type in whatever your account number is. Now, one thing about the unit accounts is you don't need a debit and a credit. What you need to know is a debit will increase the account and a credit will decrease the account. Because remember, these are things like head count or square footage. So for example, if I put in here a debit for, and please remember, I already have 1,200 in this particular account, so I'm just going to add maybe 12 more. And then after you do that, I want to also put in here a reference. And then once you have your information filled out, then you'll want to go here to the top and just click the Post button. I'm not going to print out all the reports. Okay. So basically, that's how you enter in the actual for a unit account. Now, I'm going to hop back over here to budgeting because that was basic GP, the standard GP. And to get to the budgets, there are two ways to do that. One, you could go to your cards, financial, and go down to budgets. Or over in the financial area page, I can go financial, click on expand my cards, and then go down to budgets here. Okay, in my particular demo system, you'll see I have several budgets already created. If you are new to budgeting and you've never entered a budget before, then typically what you'll have is you'll have a blank window. Now on this budgeting selection, it's a pretty easy window to navigate. You'll notice you'll have several icons up here, or options on the toolbar. One is a new. If I click new, I will have two options here. One is using Microsoft Dynamics GP, and secondly, using the Budget Wizard. I recommend using the Budget Wizard for Excel because what this does is it allows you to export out your GL accounts into an Excel spreadsheet. You can add the information into these Excel spreadsheet and then import it back in. Now, if you chose using Microsoft Dynamics GP, and I'll click on it real quick, all this is going to allow you to do is to change one GL account. Instead of having it nicely exported out into an Excel spreadsheet where you can manipulate the data, then import it back in, you are constricted to just selecting a budget ID, and like 2017, and then you'll have to actually go in and select your account. And then from selecting your account, you'll be allowed to, change the numbers in here. But like I said, this is only to change one account. Now, Going back over here, like I said, I would suggest using Budget Wizard for Excel, and we'll see that in just a second. There are also some other options up here. One is Open, and you can open any budget that you select in the bottom half of the window using either Microsoft Dynamics GP or using Excel. Now, I would also suggest using Excel here as well because you get the big picture. You see all of your data or information in an Excel spreadsheet. If you ever need to delete a budget, there's the delete button here on the toolbar. And there's also an Excel function where you can, any of these budgets that are selected, I can export it to Excel or I can import it in Excel. And we're going to see that as well. What we're going to do is create a really quick budget. We're going to export it to Excel and then we're going to import it. The rest of the buttons on here, such as File, you can always add this window to a shortcut, which will appear on the home page in the left navigation. And then the other options are your standard tools and then help, and you always know that if you go to about this window, it will tell you everything you need to know about the budgeting module and the budgeting window. Okay, so I'm going to go back over here to New, and I'm just going to go here and create a new budget. So I'm going to select using Budget Wizard for Excel. And I got a nice little neat wizard here, and I will go through and click Next. And then the first option I get here is enter an ID for this budget. So I already have a budget for 2017, but I'm going to create a new one. There is a little icon over to the right, looks like a little lock. And you can actually lock a budget. And what this allows you to do, and first of all, put in a new password, and once you do that, you have to re-enter your password. But what this allows you to do is, if someone does not have a password, they will not be able to make changes to your budget. In some cases, that's a good thing, because I've come across a lot of people who come to me and say, people are changing the budget numbers, how do I stop that? Well, here's how you stop that. You put a password on it. The second field down is enter a description for this budget. Pretty self-explanatory. And then select how to base this budget, fiscal year or by a specific date range. So if you put in a specific date range, you'll get the additional option of from and to. So here you just select your your year or your date range by the calendar. However, I am tending toward the fiscal year. So if you select fiscal year, select the date range for this budget, you have to pick your year. So I'm more interested in my 2017 budget, so I'm going to select 2017. Then go over here and click Next. Now, there are a couple of other options here for the budgeting. Typically, if you are starting with a brand new budget, you would want to have blank budget here. And what this does is it creates a blank budget in Excel. A formatted worksheet will be created with accounts, descriptions, and periods. However, no budget amounts will be included, meaning that in the next couple of steps, and you're going to see this, I'm going to choose which GL accounts I want to add to a budget or to my budget. And if I choose blank budget here, it will bring in those GL accounts I select. In addition to, it will have, since it's a fiscal year budget, January through December, and the amounts in the spreadsheet will be 0. Now, if I use an open percent year, this is going to calculate a new budget on the actual balances of any year that hasn't been closed or closed by increasing or decreasing the open year balances by a certain percentage. I can also do an other budget percent or a historical budget percent. Now, what these three options allow me to do is to use either an open year or other budgets or a historical year numbers, the budgets I already have in GP, and I can either increase or decrease those numbers by a certain percent. I'm going to start out here and go through the blank budget, and then I'm going to click Next. Now, the thing to notice with the blank budget is, and this window will also tell you this, you want to select the years from which you want to pull actual amounts. Now, if I'm using anything but a blank budget, I would want to select, what year that I'm referencing or want to pull in my original numbers. Now, if I do not want to pull any actual amounts, which I don't, do not select any of the years. So since I'm using a blank budget, I'm not going to select any of the years. Click Next. Okay, so here's where the fun begins. Now, I can choose to create one Excel spreadsheet and have balance sheet accounts, profit and loss accounts, unit accounts all in one. Typically, some people, most of the time, don't exactly budget on balance sheet accounts. It's usually somewhere in the profit and loss accounts or the unit accounts. So I'm going to make these two selections, and then I'm going to click Next. From there, I'm going to select which account types that I want to work with. Now, I can select all accounts, and if I do, then for my previous selection, it's going to bring in all P&L accounts, and it's going to bring in all unit accounts. However, that might be a little bit more than what you want to work with. And in our example, or in our scenario, for the essence of time, I'm just going to go through and actually select specific accounts that I want to bring in for a budget. So I go down to Select Accounts, and there is a segment field. Now, in my demo company, I have 3 segments. The first one is department, the second one is my natural number, and the third one is a location. So I'm going to click on my segment. I'm going to choose the second segment because that's actually my natural account. Go over to From, because I have a From and To. And then I'm just going to go look up the number. There's also a drop down over here, so if you need to, refresh it, or it's sorted by segment ID. And in my case, my sales starts at 4,000, so 4,100 would be my first selection. And then if I go to my 2, I'm just going to go all the way down to 999. So once I have my range selected, I'm going to go to the Insert button, add the restriction. Now, I'm not limited here to just, segment 2. If, for example, I want to bring in my departments or any other information, I can also go back and select a different segment. Click on From. And I'll then go down and click on To. And then click Insert. From there, I'm going to click Next. And this window is actually called the Account Verification window. I can actually go through here, and any of the accounts I do not want to show with my budget or I'm not budgeting for, I can go through and deselect them just by checking the box. I also have here at the bottom and to the right an Add Account. So any additional accounts that may not be in my account range, I can select these individually. Just go in and highlight it and click Select, and it'll put it in your range. I really don't want to add that one in, so we'll deselect it. And then you click the Next button. This screen is actually called the Workbook Selection. So here is where you determine how you want to send it to Excel. I can create a new workbook, or I can add it to an existing workbook. In my case, I actually want to create a new workbook. So I select it and click Next. And the last window here, completing the budget window for Excel, is going to give me all my criteria that I chose. My budget ID, description, the year, what calculation method it is, restrict accounts by, and then for my different account types. Then all I do is just click Finish. And I also had to determine a location for my Excel workbook. So I'm going to actually send this to my desktop. Call this Budget 2017 version 1. Okay. So now down here in my budget ID, I'll actually see budget 2017. This is the budget that's just created. However, it has absolutely zero information in it. So what I need to do is actually go over to my desktop where I put the budget, and it's opening, 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 and here you will see my blank budget. Now, pardon me, I have to scroll around a little bit, that's okay. Your budget will actually have obviously several columns in here, and they're already pre-formatted. You do not have to format them. But you can also put calculations in here if you wanted to. However, it must be noted that any balance type that is a credit type GL account, such as sales increases with a credit, any liability, retained earnings, equity, increases with a credit, you will need to add in the number here as a negative. So for sales, any numbers that I want to put into GP or import into GP, I need to add them as a negative, just like you see here. But for me, I'm just going to copy and paste that over. Now, getting more into the expense area, such as like salaries and wages, those numbers will actually be a positive number because we know that expenses and assets, they increase on the debit side. So anything you want to put here, I know that's January, the remark table made. Okay. And you'll notice there is a column for the total in P. So this actually does go through and total all of the amounts that I put in for each one of the periods. Now, what you don't want to do, you don't want to add to this worksheet, nor do you want to take away from it. Because if you do and you try to import it into GP, it will not work. Okay, so the columns that we have here, obviously we have, there's an account column, there's your description, you have a beginning balance. If you want a beginning balance for your budget, you can have that. All of your periods. It also has your date range, has your title up here, all the way to December, and then to the total. There is also a master total at the end. So just in case that you need to see your totals and what they look like, there is one all the way at the bottom. Okay, so now that I have my budget in here and I just put in, just a little an amount of about $2,000 for my sales, I'm actually going to go over here and save it. Remember, it's already on the desktop, so then I'm going to close it. And I'm going to go back over here to my budget window. Remember, it's in Cards Financial Budget. And my budget 2017 is selected. So I want to have that selected. Then I'm going to go back up to Excel, and then I'm going to say Import from Excel. It's going to give me my budget wizard once more. I'm going to click Next. Now, a couple of things you can do is what type of budget do you want to import? Do you want to do a new GP budget? No, because I already have budget 2017 I want to import into. So I'm going to click the second option here, which is an existing Microsoft Dynamics GP budget. I'm going to click my lookup, choose my budget for 2017, because this is where I want it to go to. I want the information I put it in Excel to go into this particular budget that I created. So I'll click Select. Then I'm going to click Next. And here is where I'm going to browse out to my particular budget I just created, which is Budget 2017 version 1. I'm going to click Open. Now, one thing to note, because I've seen people get a little frustrated on this window, is that there's an area below where you select the Excel file. It does have Budget 2017, but note that the next button is not open for you quite yet. So you actually have to click on Budget 2017 for the next button to be an option for you. Click Next. And then from here, it's going to say, you have specified the following options. Import existing budget from this particular budget. Now I'm going to click Finish. And it's going to bring in my budget, and it's going to go through the rows. Okay, so now that it's finished, I can actually go in here and see some of the information. One thing you can do with the budget is if you double click on it, well, I'm sorry, if you click on it once to highlight it and then go over to Open, and then I'm just going to go to the Using Microsoft Dynamics GP. And like I said before, if I wanted to update any GL account, just one-off, here's a good window to go to. However, for me, I choose to go through the Excel. Another thing, since the budget ID is selected, there's a print button at the top of the toolbar. I can actually go to the print button, click it. I'm going to select Screen for my report destination, click OK. And it's going to be quite a few pages here. However, what I want you to see is, I want you to see that from this report, if you needed a quick view of, okay, did my budget come in, am I missing an account, or whatever, you can come in here and quickly look at, here's my budget 2017, here's the GL account that I populated, and then it has the numbers. Well, these are numbers I did earlier, but it'll go in here and show you the numbers that you had for each GL account for each period. The only downside to this particular report is that you notice mine is 631 pages. So it's quite a few pages. Now there are a couple of other options on this window, and one of them is actually the ability to combine budgets. Now some people need to take two budgets that they created and then put it all in one. You can do that by clicking the combine budget, and then you have a master budget and then combine with budget ID here, and then you can delete the budget after it's combined. So you always will have a master budget, whatever it is, and then you can select some other budget you have out there, and this will merge the two budgets into one. So once you have both of the budgets in your fields, you just click Process. Okay, so now we have some budget data in our budget. And most people are going to ask me now, okay, I wanted to do certain reporting with management reporter, such as an actual versus budget variance type report. And it's very easy to do if I'm going to go over here. I already have management reporter open. And earlier I already created a report definition. It's called budget versus actual. Now, if you use management reporter currently, you are already aware of the fact that you can use different rows, such as maybe a P&L type row format that you created with pretty much any column. So you can mix and match your rows and columns and trees on a report definition. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go over here to the column and show you how to set up or bring in your budget data into a management reporter report. So here's one that I already have created, and you're going to be very familiar with how here over in column C, this is my actual, and I've set it to periodic, which means it's going to bring in the net change for the month. And then over in my column D, I have a column for budget. Now, what's different about this is the line that is the book code attribute category. It says budget. So if I click on it, and remember I named my budget budget 2017. There we go. When I click on it, the first option I'm given is the actual. What the actual is your actual GL transactions, your data that is in Dynamics GP. Under the actual is the list of all the budgets. Now, I'm not limited to how many budgets I can have. I'm not limited to forecast. I'm not limited to having numerous budgets in one particular in one particular column either. What I can do is I can click on this drop down, and then for my budget, that is not here. Okay. Okay, I called it budget 2017. Oh, I know one. Okay. Funny thing about Management Reporter, I've actually had this open all day, so since I just created a new budget, I might, let's go and refresh the cache. Okay. Over here. See if it'll show up now. Yeah, there we go. All right, so that was just a little trick. I just needed to update it. If it's not showing up in the list, do what I did. Just go to Tools. And I actually do this quite often. Refresh the cache financial data. Pretty simple. All right, so from my drop down, I'm going to select my budget 2017. And I created an actual budget, and I did it for periodic. So this is only going to pull in whatever month that I run the report for, versus I created some year-to-date. So if you'll see in the actual budget amounts down here for periods covered, I selected year-to-date. And then on my budget, I have actual here, and then I'm going to choose my budget I just created, which is budget 2017. So that's how you add into a column, your budgeting budget numbers. Now I'm just going to save this. I'm going to go back to my report, and then we'll go and see 427. So now we'll just generate it. Okay. So for my report here, you'll see I only added in, a budget number for this sales account, this 4,100. So we're seeing my $2,000 that I added in here, and this was my actual amount. So my budget minus actual was this variance, and my variance number was around 77% negative. It also will capture my year-to-date amount, which was 8,000. Now I also have in here some extra columns for a variance and a variance percent. And I'll go back and show you how to do that in just a second. So back on my report definition, I'll go back to my column. And so for my variance, what I've done is when I'm setting up my column, all I'm doing, if I just do it real quick here, is just giving the header a name, and then I actually have to select a calculation. So in Management Reporter world, I can either do the drop down or I can type it in. You'll see me type in a lot. And click the calculation, and then on the formula, there's a line for formula. I'm just saying column D minus column C. So that's my budget minus actual. There's some formatting that I'm doing as well. So for this particular variance, I can select a certain format. I can do currency, numeric, percentage, custom. So on the variance percentage, what I selected is, now double click on that line. And I actually select a percentage. So once I select percentage, I can go over to the right and select how many decimal places that I want. By default, it's going to give you 2. But if you click the down arrow, you can say 0. Now, what's interesting about this format override, and that is really fun, is you can have a different value for override text, a 0 value. So anytime the field is 0 or calculates and it's 0, you can put whatever you want here to say, you can type it in, you have type in 0, or have some character that you would like to put in here, and then you can click OK. I'm just going to leave mine blank, so, and then click OK. In addition to, on a variance, whenever you have a variance or variance percentage, you want to also use the print control called XCR. And what that does is whenever an account, like you saw on the sales account, increases by a credit. And the XCR tells it to change the sign in the column if the normal balance of the row is a credit. And like I said, that your sales account is going to be credit. If you use, liabilities and equity accounts are going to be a credit, a normal balance of credit. So all this does is flip the sign so it looks correct. So if we don't use an XCR on the column, when the report produces itself, the variance is going to show up as a negative, and you don't really want it to show up as a negative. Okay. Just to see a little bit more of this, I'm going to go back to my old budget that I had in here that had a lot more data, or a little bit more data than what I just imported. And it's always a good idea if you change columns and rows and report definitions, just be mindful and save it before you go back over to your report definition itself, so that your numbers will be updated. And let's say this one. And I'm going to, okay, and we will generate this report. Okay, so from my other budget that I had created earlier, which I switched over, we can see that, here's my actual number. I have a budget for April of $8,000. My variance was $792. And because I have that XCR, remember the XCR, in the column, when the calculation is performed, so I'm doing budget minus actual, it was showing up as a positive number. And that's what we want, because we want to show our variance. Yes, we have a variance, it's a positive number. We also have a variance percentage, and it's going the right way too, because we're under, we're actually, well, I guess I should change that too, but our variance is negative 9%. You'll also see in the second line of this account 4110, our budget, we're actually over budget on this one. So we're not over budget, but we're under budget here. We're actually over the budget on the first line. And so on and so forth. Now, what about unit accounts? Well, we can also use unit accounts. Like, for example, I have a headcount allocation down at the bottom of the report. I don't have any headcount budget numbers in yet, but I can have those real quick. So I'm going to go back to Management Reporter and show you over here. I'm going to go, and this time I'm going to go to my row format. The reason why I'm going to my row format is because I put it in a special calculation for use with unit accounts, and it's all the way at the bottom. Okay, so what I have here, this was the row that you saw. That was great. That was highlighted in gray with my headcount allocation. And what I did is I took a specific headcount, employee count row, which was this row right here. And this is, remember my unit account, that is 600-9020-00, where I put in, the amount or the additional amount for the headcount. Well, what I'm doing is I'm using my headcount here to perform a specific calculation using my sales and my employee count. So what I did is I created a row and I called it headcount allocation. I have to put in calculation, or CAL, and if you double click on here, you'll see the CAL. And then from there, what I said in my formula, I said C equals C dot row 2180 divided by C dot 6224. And what that means is, for column C, and not column C in the row, it's column C over in on the column format, but I wanted my column C for this particular row to equal column C's 2180, and 2180 in my case is salaries and wages. So I'm taking the total of salaries and wages and actually dividing it by my head count, which is on which is on row 6224 right here. See if I can. Right. Oops. There we go. Okay. And not only am I doing it for column C, I'm also doing it for column G, where I'm saying column G, and I mean column over into column formatting. I want it to equal the intercept of that column G in the column definitions, row 2180, remember that's sales, divided by column G, row 6224, which is my head count. So remember column C and column G. So this is going to force these particular numbers into those columns. So I'm going to show you that real quick. I'm going to go over and to my column again and see it in column C and column G. So wherever it says actual, that's why you only saw on that particular row, you saw an actual, and you only saw in column G for actual a number, a certain number. Now, if I go back, and I could add this into also like the total or the, the budget, if I have budgeting numbers in there. So for my row, I can add to it. So just by clicking on my row here, so if I wanted to also create this calculation for my budget column would be D. So I would have to say D equals D dot 2180 divided by D dot 6224, and then put a comma after it because I'm actually adding in several columns, not just one. And then H, column H is going to equal H dot 2180 divided by H dot 6224. Now, so now that I have my formula in there, it's quite a long formula now, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to save. And, okay, that's a good thing. I actually have an error in here. Well, one good thing about Management Reporter, if you hover over the red circle with the exclamation point, it'll tell you exactly what is wrong with it. And I have some periods in here it does not like. So we'll fix that real quick. I'll say, there we go, right there. Hit the wrong key, that's okay, we'll fix it. All right, so let's see if we can save it now. And it looks fine, it did not give us any errors. We'll go back over to our report definition, and we will generate this report one more time. All right. So from here, I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom again. There we go. And, oh, it did not show up here. Oh, I know why. There is one extra step in here. Let's go back to Management Reporter. You guys are going to see me go here 20 million times, so everybody's going to, not there, we're going to go to row. So everybody's going to know exactly where to go and how to do this. So all the way down at the bottom, there is one more column over here, and you notice that before it only put CNG, so I need to add in here my other columns, and I'm just going to say C, D, G, H. And one other thing you might have noticed in here on my G, I actually have parentheses. You can have this particular calculation with a parentheses or without it. It doesn't matter. Now, I will say with the parentheses, though, if, for example, I want to add to this calculation and say, oh, times 10% or something like that for that particular column, I can come in here after the parenthesis and put, asterisk, and that means times, and then put 0.10. So that way, for this particular column on this row, it will actually take my sales divided by my head count and maybe, multiply it times 0.10, which would be 10%. So I can customize this particular row any way I want to. Now, over here, this is in column H on the row format. This is a column restriction. If, for example, how I'm doing this, where I'm actually restricting a certain columns, I'll also need to just put in here what columns I'm restricting, and they line up with what you have over here. Whatever equals C, D, G, or H, just put it over in the column restrictions. Okay, let's save it. Let's go to report definitions one more time. Let's go click generate. Okay, so now we see that I have a calculation for my budget as well. It's $28.11, and then for the year to date, it's $112.44. All right, so we have a few minutes left, and what I want to do is I have a few more slides in here, and that's not it, but we'll go back to my other slide. Aha, there we go. So we got the different types of budgeting types and unit accounts, the budget window, and that's where you find the budget window, financial area, cards, and budgets. There's the budget calculations. There's, open year percent, other budget, historical year, there's a blank budget. There's also the budget calculation methods. There are several of them in here up to a historical percent year. And there are also, I wanted to touch on some other options for reporting, budgeting, and forecasting. 3 other products that we actually implement and support is one, Adaptive Insights, which I'm a favorite of. And with Adaptive Insights, I'm sorry, you go back and say Adaptive Insights, and then there's BI 360, and there's actually de facto planning. These are 3 different separate excuse me, applications that you could use with GP if you are looking to change from Management Reporter, or you're just looking for a different type of reporting system altogether. So really quick, I want to talk a little bit about each one. The first one being Adaptive Insights. This particular product is actually 100% in the cloud, and its purpose is for budgeting and planning. Now, with Adaptive, you also get dashboards, or you can have dashboards. You can do consolidated consolidation, where you have multiple companies roll up into one. You can do financial reporting. You can do budgeting. You can do forecasting. You can have mini budgets as you want. It also works with another product called Office Connect, where you can view your data in an Excel an Excel-like application, and that particular application also connects with Office Word and PowerPoint. And you can use those all together to, whenever your budget or your financials update, then you can update the Office Connect as well. It's also streamlined end-to-end corporate performance management. You can do financial reporting, budgets, forecasting, consolidations, and multi-currency. There is one version of the truth, meaning that it tracks, who changes different records. It integrates with multiple source systems, meaning that it can integrate or pull data from your Dynamics GP database, or if you don't have Dynamics GP, it can actually pull from other sources, including an Excel spreadsheet. It's very data-driven to make for a decision-making culture, and it also makes scenario modeling. So as we were talking about the dashboards and what-if analysis really easy. It also increases collaboration with integrated dashboards. So that's Adaptive Insights, and the next one down is the BI 360, and it's actually from a company called Solver. And it also is a complete suite where you can do budgeting, reporting, dashboarding models, along with a pre-configured data warehouse. It's actually a live reporting, and it connects directly to your ERP database. Now let's talk about that for just a second, where BI 360 does live reporting, things like, adaptive. It actually has a connection to your database that it will run during certain increments. Like it may be every 5 minutes, maybe every hour, maybe once a day, so you can set that. Or it can be run on an ad hoc basis to where you can pull in your data to adaptive, whereas BI 360 is actually live in real time and has a direct connection to your database. People like BI 360 because it's Excel and a web-based reporting, budgeting, and forecasting system. It provides you with a secure, streamlined collaboration, workflow, audit trail, modeling, and a what-if analysis. It's fully integrated with dashboards. It is also a pre-configured data warehouse and combines multiple data sources into one place for complete enterprise-level reporting. If I get going the right way, okay. Our third solution is called De facto. Now, what De facto is probably the most robust system of all of the budgeting applications that we provide. It is the Mercedes, let's just say, of budgeting, forecasting, reporting. But we know, with Mercedes, there is a cost to it. So, De facto provides you with budgeting, forecast, consolidation, analysis, reporting, predictive analysis in a single unified product. The reason why some people go with De facto is because it can do very, very, very complex calculations for budgeting. However, if you do not have complex calculations for budgeting, you are probably better off using either Adaptive or BI 360. Because those two products actually do a lot of complex calculations. However, De facto does the heavy, heavy complex calculations. Now, also with De facto, you get the data entry, reporting, and analysis all in Excel. It's a partnership with Microsoft to co-develop advanced Cortana analytics. And if anybody has a PC or a newer edition of Office loaded on their machine, we know what Cortana is. We've seen the commercials. It also has predictive forecasting applications for the customers. Has pre-built connectors and for popular ERP and CRM systems, including all Dynamics offerings. It has a built-in data warehouse and uses SQL relational and cube technology for maximum performance. And if anybody is familiar with analysis cubes, this is very similar technology that it uses. Now, if anyone, well, went the wrong way. So let's talk a little bit about Forecaster, just really, really quick here. I know I'm pretty much out of time, but currently what different clients have purchased in the past is Forecaster. Now, Forecaster, users, they continue to utilize Forecaster. However, Forecaster probably is going to go away somewhere in the future. It's not going to be around forever. But, there are a lot of different options that, we can offer for that. You can still purchase Forecaster up until May the 1st, 2017, and it will be supported with current versions of GP. If you own Forecaster today, your enhancement will be reduced after 5/1/2017 if purchased via business-ready licensing. So just a heads up on that. And if you want any other or additional information regarding any of those 3 applications, Adaptive Insights, BI 360, or De facto, please contact Terry Gimley at the email address that you see in orange below. He is our Director of Financials, Planning, and Analytics Solutions. And is just all around great person to talk to about any kind of financial planning or, budgeting resource applications that you may be looking into. So with that being said, that's all I have for today. We're going to open it up for, a few questions if we have any right now, okay?
All right, we do have 2 questions. The first one is, when you password protect the budget download in the wizard for Excel, are you password protecting the Excel spreadsheet and the budget in GP?
Only the budget.
Okay.
In GP. Mm-hmm.
And the next one, when you talked about creating a blank budget, you said it created a budget in the Excel wizard for January to December. We're on a fiscal year, November to October. Can you set it up that way?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yeah, what it's gonna do is it's gonna read your fiscal period. So in GP, let me go over there real quick. Okay, so GP tool setup, company fiscal periods. So in your initial implementation of GP, you actually set your periods here. This is what it's reading. So it just reads the period. So if your period's from, it could be, June to May or something like that. It's going to say, okay, for my year 2017, what are the periods within that range or that time frame? Make sense? Yeah.
Awesome. Well, those are the 2 questions that we have. Again, if you have more questions, you can reach out to Amy. Her contact information will be here up on the screen shortly. Also, a reminder that our next webinar will be on March 28th from 1 to 2 on choosing the right reporting tool. And in addition, our annual Aspire Client Conference will be coming up in May with deep dive training around Dynamics GP. So you can register for that now on our website at socius1.com. So we hope to see you there. And everyone, just have a great day, and thanks for joining us.